Back to the podcast on
Thank you.
another episode. We can't get rid of you around here. And I do think that the two podcasts, like the podcast we just recorded, like 30 seconds before this, is probably going to be the podcast that airs the day before this one.
Oh,
and we're going to get 2 Paige podcasts in a row. And you know what? If it doesn't end up being that way, then you'll see this one next week. But anywho, I'm so excited to keep this series going and talking more about estate planning, what that looks like for ranchers, people in ag, and all of that jazz. But today, we are specifically talking about wills and trust and the difference between them. Mm-hmm. So, can you, for all the listeners out there, and even maybe a refresher for myself, explain the difference between a will and a trust for me?
Absolutely. So a will is a legal document that says who gets your property after you pass away. But a will has to go through something called probate, which is a court process that is typically expensive, public, and slow. A trust, on the other hand, is like a private contract that you make during your lifetime. You move your assets into the trust, and when you pass away, everything transfers out to the beneficiaries and anyone who receives that without going through probate. So typically trusts help to wrap that up a little bit faster. It's not public. It's not expensive. Some people will have a trust administrator that they will hire to distribute those assets, but it's different. It's different than probate and having a will go through probate because the government and the court system is controlling that in a way, whereas it's not like that with a trust. So I remember when I was interning at a law firm in Dodge City when I was in college, and I was working on this probate case, and I was doing all of the expenses and the inventory. And I walked into the attorney's office and I said, "Oh my gosh, it is so expensive to die." And I was probably only 20 at the time. And the attorney just laughed, and I was like, "No, I'm serious. It's expensive to die." And it was the cost of probate.
Yeah.
So typically a trust will cost a little bit more up front to have an attorney draft a trust for you. But that you're paying for it up front rather than paying for it during probate like you would if you're getting a will probated. So that's a brief overview of some of the differences between a will and the trust. The biggest is the probate process.
Absolutely. Are there any situations where you would recommend one over the other?
Yes. So if someone only has a few simple assets, they don't have everything, scattered all over the place as farmers and ranchers typically do. Like a truck, a house, a savings account, a will might be the best way to go. However, if you own land, cattle, a business, if your assets are kind of scattered all over the place, or if you really want to be very detailed and specific in the distribution of your assets, trust might be a better way to go. It's really about control. So if you are young and you might not even have kids yet, and you're making a will, you probably just want your assets to go back to your parents. You don't have a lot of stuff scattered all over the place. However, if you want to be very specific and have this piece of property go to your brother and this go to your sister and these go to your mom or dad, then you might want to trust. So it really is about control more than it is about the amount of assets that you have. Going along with that, I hear a myth all the time that trusts are only for rich people, which is not true. I've mentioned it before, but if you own anything that requires management, like that land, cattle, then a trust is usually a better fit. Even aside from running ag operations, in some circumstances, a trust is a better fit. For example, I have one family where each parent has children from a previous marriage, and then they both have children together. So blended families are very common these days. And so they both wanted their assets to be distributed to their own children, and then some to be distributed to the children that they have together. So basically, I said, a trust is better in this situation because of the complex distribution and the control for a blended family. So it really just depends on your specific situation, which is the best tool to use.
So, like, with the differences between a will and trust, let's say that someone's listening to this and they're like, well, I only have one kid, everything's going to them, but I still have this very large ranching operation. Why do you still sometimes recommend a trust over a will for that? Because, like, so for instance, my husband and I just got married, so we did a will, like, we're doing a will, we're working on all of those things right now, and we only have to deal with a will right now because it's just going to the other person.
Yeah.
But in that situation, it's just going to one person, but you're still probably going to recommend a trust. Why would that be?
First of all, a trust would make that not public. So some people, they'll put land in their own name, in LLC names, to protect the land. So if you don't want that to be public, then definitely do a trust. Number two, all of that land is very expensive, very valuable. As we all know right now, land prices are skyrocketing. So probate is expensive, and it will just eat some of that up. Another thing to do that might be a smart thing to do in that situation with a lot of land, but only one heir, is you can set it up in the trust so that, the trust might be able to help that heir pay property taxes or pay any expenses that come along with the land. So you can set it up in a way that is not only, passing it on, but it's helping your child to create a plan and helping them to get ahead in a sense. You kind of have your hand in it even after you're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the cost side of things, a lot of people are turned away from trusts because they cost significantly more than a will.
Yes.
Like, we're talking a few $100s for a will, and we're talking a few $1,000s for a trust, right? So people are very turned away. They see the sticker shock, and they're like, nope, I don't want to deal with that, or things like that. What is your response to that? As far as cost goes, can we explain that a little bit more to people?
Yeah. So you're going to pay that much at some point. I hate to tell it to you, and I hate to admit it, but trusts you're exactly right, cost more money to draft up front. They're a lot of work. Not only do we have to round up all your assets, we need to transfer the title into the trust, assign the name to the trust name, change the beneficiaries. Trusts are a lot of work to draft, and we're also doing very meticulous drafting, getting very detailed about, your directives after you're gone. However, with the will, you are going to end up paying that much money in probate.
If not more.
So I'm currently working on a probate. It was a single woman. Her husband passed away about 20 years ago, and she's been managing everything. She owns 36 parcels of land, and I don't even know how many investment accounts. This is a huge, huge estate, and unfortunately, it's drug on forever. It's been almost a year that I've been working on it now, and I don't really see an end in sight, to be honest, because it's just taken so long to round up all of her property, round up all of the heirs, It's just a long, drawn-out process, and had she had a trust, this would have been wrapped up within 6 months, but unfortunately, it's going to continue going. So there's how the costs break down a little bit between a will and a trust.
So do people ever combine the two? Do we see people having a will and a trust? What does that situation look like?
Yes, absolutely. So even if you have a trust, you still need something called a pour-over will. And the pour-over will is basically like a backup. Hope you don't have to use it, but if we do, it's there if we need it. So it's like a safety net, and it catches anything that you might forget to title to the trust while you were alive. So let me back up, make sure I've explained this clearly enough. When you make a trust, let's say that you create the Lauren Moylan Trust, we are going to transfer all of your assets into the trust. It's kind of like an LLC, like how an LLC holds assets. That's kind of how a trust is. So all of your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, any property that you own, we're going to transfer it to the Lauren Moylan Trust. And then after we do that, you will still have total control over all of those assets. You will be able, you won't recognize it in your daily life that things are titled to the Lauren Moylan Trust. But let's say that you buy a new parcel of land here in a couple years and you deed it to yourself instead of the Lauren Moylan Trust, and then you were to pass away. So everything will be distributed out of the trust, and then we'll say, oh no, there's this one piece of land, and that pour over will come in and it will basically say, hey court, let's make this as simple as possible. Yeah. She had the Lauren Moylan Trust. This was a mistake. Here's all these documents, and hopefully a judge will just say, okay, easy, let us off easy. Won't have to go through the whole process. So a pour over will is basically like a safety net for the trust in that way. It catches anything that we might have missed. We don't want to use it if we don't have to, but it's there in case we need it.
Absolutely. So a question on the transferring of everything into a trust. So if you're running an LLC right now and you transfer that into the trust, you're still operating it as an LLC. Correct. It's just deeded differently, right? So instead of being in my name, or like the LLC is owned and operated by Lauren Moylan, it would be the Lauren Moylan Trust. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. So LLCs are another good estate planning tool. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yes.
But you can either, have those transferred to the trust in a way that they can be distributed to your heirs, or you can keep an LLC separate. But you're exactly right. You don't notice it in your day-to-day life. Nothing changes for you. It's just the title is a little bit different.
Absolutely. Okay, so for the folks listening today, how do you recommend guiding them along what the first right step is for them, or what path and avenue might be best for them?
Yeah, so the first right step is a conversation. So sit down with someone who understands ag operations and talk about the assets that you own, your goals, your family situation, and remember to plan as if something might happen tomorrow.
Yes.
Every ranch, every farm, every family is different. There's no one size fits all approach, and a good estate plan will really show your specific values of your operation and your goals of your operation. So I've explained this before, but oftentimes when a young couple comes in, we'll start with a will, as they don't have many assets and they probably won't have a complex distribution. And then when they come back later, we'll go with a trust, because they typically have their hands in a lot of things later on in life.
Yes, absolutely. So as we start to close out today, are there any other tidbits of advice, anything that you want to close with before we head out?
I would just say start the conversation, whether you have an attorney or an ag consultant. Both of those types of people can help ask you some guiding questions to get you thinking about what you might want to do and what might be best for your family. So just start by having the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And for all of you listeners out there, make sure that you check out the show notes. We will have all of Paige's links linked down below if you want to start that conversation with her, or if you just need some more advice. Paige has an amazing blog where she talks about things like this. We've got the Cattle USA Daily newsletter where Paige has a weekly feature where she talks about this. We've just got her on all the platforms, y'all. So make sure you check out those show notes. Hit up all of Paige's links. Make sure you go check all of that stuff out. And as always, thank you for listening to another episode. I hope that you guys were able to come on and learn something new today, because we have an amazing person here who I am very grateful to call a friend, and a great resource that we have here for all of you ranchers and producers out there. So as always, make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review. We really appreciate it here at the team. And if that first step in your conversation is maybe sharing this podcast, that'd be a cool first step too. And we would appreciate it here at the team as well. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and we will see you all next time on another episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. Have a good one, y'all.